It was late when I got home, the kind of quiet that feels thick, like the walls themselves are holding their breath. I dropped my suitcase by the door and kicked off my shoes, the familiar ache in my feet a reminder of another long trip. But even through the exhaustion, I felt that small spark of relief. Home. The lights were low, the air still, and Liam's jacket hung right where he always left it. I smiled without thinking. Everything was just as I'd left it, or so I thought. I crept into the bedroom, trying not to make a sound. He was already in bed, turned away, the steady rise and fall of his back the only thing moving. I slipped under the covers and let my head fall onto the pillow, sinking into the comfort I'd been craving for days. But something pulled me back. A scent. Light, sweet, and floral. Not mine. I blinked into the darkness, confused for a second, trying to place it. It wasn't my shampoo. Not my lotion. For a moment, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe the hotel detergent had rubbed off on my clothes. Maybe Liam had bought a new fabric softener. I even laughed under my breath, trying to shake off the thought. But the more I lay there, breathing it in, the more certain I became. That wasn't my scent. And Liam didn't wear perfume. My chest tightened. I didn't say a word. I just stayed there, still, eyes open in the dark. Something had changed. And I knew it. The next morning, I didn't mention it. I poured our coffee like I always did, kissed him goodbye at the door, and waved as if everything was fine. But inside, something had shifted. That scent. It lingered in my mind like a song you can't unhear. I kept playing it back, trying to trace its origin, as if my memory could suddenly crack the code. I didn't want to be the suspicious wife, but I also wasn't naive. That night, I changed the sheets, told him it was just time. I sprayed my own perfume onto the pillows, thinking maybe I could drown it out, mask it. But as I lay there, nose against the cotton, it was still there. Fainter, maybe, but unmistakable, like someone had pressed themselves into the fabric and left a piece of their presence behind. It clung to me, even in my dreams. I started noticing other things, little things. His sudden urgency to shower before I got home. His new cologne, which he said he got as a gift from a client. The way he looked at his phone and smiled when he thought I wasn't watching. But I didn't say a word. I watched. I noted. I let the silence stretch between us like a thread I wasn't ready to snap. Something told me I had to wait. Not because I was afraid, but because I needed to be sure. It's strange how fast your instincts kick in when your heart's on the line. I started tuning into everything. The way his voice shifted when he answered unknown calls, how often he worked late, how his kisses became mechanical, like habits instead of feelings. None of it screamed guilt. It whispered it. And those whispers were louder than anything he could have said. I didn't ask. I didn't accuse. Instead, I paid attention. There's a quiet power in that. Watching someone dig their own grave while thinking you're still in the dark. I smiled at his stories, nodded at his excuses. But inside, I was building something. Piece by piece, breath by breath. I knew if I rushed, I'd only get fragments. And I didn't want fragments. I wanted the whole truth. Every night I went to bed and breathed in that same scent. It became a ritual, almost. My own way of staying connected to the mystery. That perfume wasn't just someone else's fragrance anymore. It was a message. A warning. A betrayal soaked into the fibers of my pillow. And without saying a word, I decided I would follow it, wherever it led. I wasn't just guessing anymore. I was hunting. Quietly. Carefully. I started with the smart camera system Liam had installed himself. I knew the app, knew his passwords. He always thought I was forgetful with tech stuff. Turns out, playing dumb has its advantages. I waited until he left for the gym one night, then pulled up the footage. My fingers trembled, but I kept going. At first, nothing. Days of him walking in and out, doing laundry, eating leftovers. But then, a frame that made my stomach knot, a glimpse of a shadow near the hallway, just out of frame. Too soft to be a glitch, too human to ignore. That was enough to start. I ordered a tiny voice recorder online, the kind that looks like a charger, slipped it behind the nightstand, set it to trigger on sound, and then I waited. He kissed me goodnight that evening like always. Same rhythm, same tired smile. And still, that perfume. I closed my eyes and let him sleep while I stared into the dark, heart pounding with the weight of secrets I hadn't heard yet. I wasn't scared, I was focused. It's funny how betrayal doesn't break you. It sharpens you. I knew I had crossed a line, but so had he, and I wasn't going to unsee what I already knew. Over the next few days, I started collecting things. Things most people wouldn't notice. A wine glass out of place. A lipstick smear on the rim that wasn't mine. A pair of earrings I'd never seen before, tucked beneath the edge of the bed like they'd rolled there in a hurry. I took pictures of everything, labeled folders, dates, times. It felt surreal, like I was documenting someone else's life. But it was mine, my marriage, my home. I paid attention to his grooming habits too. The sudden shaving at 6 p.m., the cologne he never wore before unless it was date night, the way he'd glance at himself in the mirror just a little too long. And the gym visits? Always around the same time. Always when I was working late. I started tracking it all, mapping out his routines like puzzle pieces. And every time I started to doubt myself, that perfume on my pillow reminded me not to. The house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage. Every mug, every drawer, every shadow held questions. I'd walk through the rooms and wonder, where had she been? What had they done? How close had they come to getting caught? I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just observed. Because sometimes silence is louder than confrontation. And mine was starting to echo back at me. At night, after Liam drifted off, I'd lie awake with my phone in hand, earbuds in, listening to the recorder's files. Most nights were quiet, the hum of the air conditioner, the creak of the bed frame. But sometimes, soft laughter, a second voice, the sound of zippers and whispers too intimate to mistake. My stomach would twist, but I kept listening. I needed to hear it. I needed to know how far they'd gone, and how deeply he'd lied. I wasn't just piecing together an affair. I was studying their choreography, the way he moved, how long she stayed, the patterns in their deception. It wasn't just betrayal. It was calculated, and that changed everything. It meant this wasn't a mistake. It was a choice, one he kept making. And that lit a fire in me I hadn't felt in years, a kind of clarity, cold and sharp. Every day I'd come home and check the footage, review the audio, take mental notes on what was out of place. But no matter what I found, that pillow told the same story. That scent, hers, had settled into the fibers, stubborn and smug. And now, it wasn't just a sign. It was a countdown. I didn't know exactly when it would happen, but I felt it coming. The moment. The break. The undeniable truth. The clip was only 16 seconds long, but it took me an hour to press play. It had been sitting there in the cloud, time-stamped and undeniable. Tuesday, 2:03 p.m. I recognized the angle, hallway camera. I'd seen that door swing open 100 times, but this time he wasn't alone. She walked in behind him, laughing. No hesitation, no panic, just comfort. Like she'd been there before, like it was hers too. I felt everything drain from me, the blood in my face, the heat in my chest, the hope I hadn't realized I was still clinging to. And then, worse, recognition. The woman with the soft curls and perfect lipstick. I knew her. God, I knew her. Liam had mentioned her dozens of times. Work events, team dinners. Just a friend, he'd said. She's married, he'd shrugged. I stared at her frozen face on the screen, my pulse pounding. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, gripping the phone, realizing that every lie he'd told had been neatly packaged in politeness and casual tones. She was the one. The scent. The voice. The shadow in the hallway. And now, I had proof. My hands shook, but my mind was still. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to plan, and he would never see it coming. I called a lawyer the very next morning, calm, composed, no tremble in my voice. I laid it all out, recordings, footage, timestamps, screenshots. She listened in silence, occasionally scribbling something down, occasionally glancing up at me like she couldn't quite believe how steady I was. But I wasn't numb. I was prepared. Pain makes you soft at first. Then it makes you sharp. I wasn't there to vent. I was building an exit. Carefully, methodically. We talked about everything. The house, the accounts, the legal grounds. She asked if I wanted to confront him right away. I said no, not yet. Because I had one more thing to do. Something that wasn't about revenge, but revelation. I wanted him to see himself the way I now saw him, exposed, stripped of excuses. I didn't want yelling. I wanted silence so loud it would crush him, and I had the perfect stage for it. I told him we should throw a dinner party, celebrate his recent promotion. He lit up, completely unaware. Started calling friends, sending invites, planning wine pairings. It was almost impressive how easily he smiled in my face. He had no idea what I knew. No clue that every time he touched me, every time he laughed, I was memorizing the way a liar moves. That party wasn't just a distraction. It was going to be my stage. The week leading up to the dinner felt like a performance. I played my part flawlessly. Supportive wife, smiling hostess-to-be, gently teasing him about wine choices and guest lists. Inside, I was rehearsing something else entirely. I trimmed the footage, cleaned the audio, built the sequence. It wasn't a smear campaign. It was a mirror. And when I held it up, I wanted every person in that room to see what I had seen. At night, he curled beside me in bed like nothing had changed. But I knew better. I had learned to hear the difference between truth and comfort. His breathing was shallow. His hand would twitch when his phone buzzed. He didn't suspect a thing, but some part of him was restless. Maybe guilt. Maybe fear he hadn't named yet. I'd lie awake, counting the days, each heartbeat a drum roll building toward the finale. I didn't feel hate, not even anger. What I felt was something colder, cleaner. Resolve. This wasn't about making him hurt. It was about making him face the weight of what he'd done, stripped of charm and excuses. And deep down, I think I wanted him to remember the moment forever. Not the party, not the friends, but the look on my face when everything he'd hidden came to light. The night of the party, the house looked beautiful. Candles flickered in the dining room, soft jazz played in the background, and the smell of rosemary chicken drifted through the air. I wore a navy blue dress he once said made me look effortlessly elegant. He stood by the kitchen, pouring wine, laughing with friends, so at ease, so sure of the world he thought he'd mastered. I smiled, touched his arm, played the perfect hostess. Our friends arrived one by one, handing over wine bottles and complimenting the setup. Liam basked in the praise, playing the charming host to perfection. I moved through the crowd like a dancer, offering appetizers, asking about their kids, their vacations. No one noticed how still I was beneath the smile. No one could see the steel I'd built inside, but I felt it. Every step, every laugh, was a step closer to the edge. When dinner was served, the table glowed with golden light. Glasses clinked, stories flowed, and Liam raised a toast, thanking everyone for being part of his success. He looked at me, winked. And I lifted my glass in return, heart steady. They thought this night was about him. But soon they'd understand. This wasn't a celebration. It was a revelation. And I was finally ready to speak. After dessert, the energy shifted. That full, satisfied silence when conversation naturally slows. I stood up slowly, glass in hand, and smiled at the guests like I was about to tell a charming anecdote. Liam grinned at me, completely unaware, his hand resting lightly on the back of my chair. I tapped the side of my glass with a spoon, just once, clear, sharp. Attention turned. I took a breath. I wanted to share something personal with you all, I said, my voice calm but deliberate. A short story. About love, about trust, and about perfume. The room chuckled lightly, confused, curious. Liam gave a small laugh, too, like I was about to roast him with some old vacation tale. I walked over to the TV. My finger hovered on the remote. It won't take long, I added, and pressed play. First came the hallway footage, her walking in, his arm around her, then the slow fade into audio, whispers, soft laughter, her voice saying his name. You could feel the silence drop like a curtain. No one looked at the screen. They looked at him, and he just froze, eyes wide, jaw stiff, like he couldn't decide if it was a dream or a nightmare. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. The final clip played, her walking out of our bedroom, fixing her hair, wearing that same perfume I'd come to hate. And then it faded to black. No dramatic music, no flashing words. Just silence. Real, thick, breathless silence. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. One woman covered her mouth. Liam's face had drained of all color. He looked at me like he was seeing a ghost. But I was more alive than I'd ever been. I turned to him, holding his gaze. You gave my pillow to someone else, I said, voice low, steady, and clear enough for everyone to hear. I'm reclaiming the whole damn bed. He didn't speak. Couldn't. The woman, his so-called friend, excused herself in a whisper, practically running to the door. Chairs scraped. Eyes darted. But I stood tall, unmoved. There was nothing left to explain. I didn't need applause or outrage, just truth, laid bare, in the open, in front of everyone who once saw us as perfect. Let them see. Let them know. I walked back to my seat, calm as ever, picked up my glass, and took a sip. The taste wasn't sweet. It was powerful. And as the night unraveled around him, I felt something shift inside me. A quiet, rising certainty that this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The morning after the dinner, I didn't feel broken. I felt clean. I made coffee in silence, watching the steam rise like breath from something freshly exhaled. Liam didn't come home that night, or maybe he did, but I didn't care enough to notice. I'd already moved forward in my mind. I sat at the kitchen table, my lawyer's number glowing on my phone screen, and pressed call without hesitation. It was time. Filing was swift, effortless almost. I handed her the folder I'd curated for weeks. Video clips, photos, logs, dates, audio files. She nodded, impressed. Legally, it was airtight. Emotionally, it was liberating. I wasn't bargaining for love anymore. I was claiming peace, my peace. And as word spread, through his job, our mutual friends, the truth did what it always does. It echoed, loudly. Liam's reputation took a hit almost immediately. Whispers started at work. The mistress transferred departments within days. People looked at him differently now, not with envy or admiration, but with caution. As for me, I went home and stood in my bedroom. I stripped the sheets, every last corner of them, like I was peeling off skin that didn't belong to me. It was more than cleaning. It was an exorcism. I boxed up his things in silence, the ties, the cufflinks, the shirts I used to fold with love. Now, they were just fabric, just remnants of a man who had mistaken comfort for loyalty and silence for ignorance. Each drawer I emptied felt like unclenching a fist. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was done carrying what wasn't mine to hold. And God, it felt good to finally let go. I walked through the house like I was meeting it for the first time, rearranged furniture, took down the wedding photos, painted over the wall where we'd marked our anniversary with a framed quote about forever. That word didn't mean what it used to. I bought new linens, crisp, white, untouched, and I chose a new scent, something warm, earthy, and rich. Mine. Entirely mine. I sprayed it in every room like a declaration. The house started to breathe differently. So did I. I found a playlist I hadn't heard in years and played it loud while I redecorated. Not out of defiance, out of celebration. I wasn't erasing my past. I was reclaiming my space. Piece by piece, breath by breath, I was filling it with me again. Not the version of me that waited. The one who knew. The one who acted. The one who finally came home to herself. A few weeks later, I found myself in a quiet perfume shop tucked between a bookstore and a cafe. The kind of place you only notice when you're ready to. Rows of elegant bottles lined the shelves, each holding a story, a mood, a new beginning. The shopkeeper asked what I was looking for, and I smiled. "Something that smells like freedom," I said. She didn't blink, just nodded and handed me a tester. I sprayed it on my wrist, warm notes of amber, a hint of spice, something grounding. I closed my eyes and breathed in. It didn't remind me of anyone else. It didn't chase memories. It was mine. Completely mine. I bought the bottle without hesitation. As I stepped outside, the sun caught my face, and for the first time in a long time, I felt whole, not just surviving, alive. And as I walked down the street, shoulders back, chin high, I heard my own voice in my head, calm, steady, certain. He thought I wouldn't notice the scent. He didn't know it would lead to his downfall. And with that thought, I kept walking. Not away from something, but toward everything that was finally mine.